Welcome to Let's Talk, the show that brings you the most important conversations of the day. I'm Sharad Kuttan. We've had the budget 2019, created a lot of noise, and some of that noise is coming from Sabah and Sarawak. People unhappy about the allocations for the two territories. Now, behind this, of course, has been a long-standing discussion about the Malaysia Agreement 1963. And I have in the room, in my studio today, a very special guest, somebody I really love to watch on media. He's often called by the media for his opinions about Malaysian politics. I have James Chen, who's a professor of political science, I believe. He's also the director of the Asia Institute at the University of Tasmania. Thank you, James, for joining us. We, of course, have known each other for many years and, have had the numerous opportunities to ask you about your opinions about what was unfolding in Malaysia. Now, but today, I hope you could do as a kind of 101 on the Malaysia Agreement 1963. What exactly is the reason this has emerged again as a conversation, especially in the territories of Sabah and Sarawak?
Okay, I think the starting point is you've got to remember in 2008, Barisan lost its two-thirds majority. And basically, UMNO stayed in power because of the MPs from Sabah and Sarawak. So certainly for the first time in the last half-century, the people of Sabah and Sarawak suddenly woke up and realized that they had real political power. That without the MPs from Sabah and Sarawak, UMNO would follow from power. So that was the time when they decided that it's time for us to assert ourselves, apply pressure, and maybe get some additional benefits out of the federation. But the real story really is that the people of Sabah and Sarawak feel that they've been marginalized ever since they joined the Federation in 1963. They felt that things have not gotten any better. Primarily, they feel that, most of the natural resources in both states in terms of the revenue ended up in Peninsular Malaysia. So the common things they complain is that if you go to Sabah and Sarawak today, you'll find that in the interiors, it is remarkable, after 50 years of independence, many of the interior areas don't even have normal pipe water, no regular electric supply, things that you take for granted here in Peninsular Malaysia. You don't have it in the interiors of Sabah and Sarawak. And even roads. There's not a proper highway even today in Sabah and Sarawak. So that's the reason why people talk about the Pan-Borneo Highway. So when they come over to this side, they see the Petronas Tower, they see the brand new KLIA, they see the North-South Highway, and they see all sorts of big infrastructure projects over here. And the first thing that comes to their mind is that how is this possible? We thought that we were joining a federation that will get our piece of development, but something happened, we didn't get it. So it's very much an issue of historical grievances more than anything else.
Okay, so you have the historical grievances, and I can understand that, very palpable, right? People's sense of their landscape, the difference between Sabah, Sarawak and the peninsula in terms of development. But why go back to 1963? Why not just cast a new conversation that's about the future, about the demands now with the kind of political heft, the leverage they have? Why not just do it that way? Why revert to the Malaysia Agreement 1963?
Well, I think you're talking about a very specific segment of those who wants to look back. But again, the movement for MS63 is a very wide movement. You've got many segments within the movement. Of course, the so-called hard segment are the people who says that the entire Malaysia Agreement is not even valid in the first place. Or even if it is valid, there are so many breaches that it's valid. It's totally invalid in any case. So that's one group. You've got another group who says that, yes, we've been marginalized for the past 50 years, so maybe it's time we catch up. There's another group says that these are historical grievances, but to deal with it, we have to look forward, as you mentioned, come up with a new set of federal-state relationship. But there's also another very interesting segment in Sabah and Sarawak who says that there's no issue, because the thing is, we've joined the Federation of Malaysia. We should see all ourselves as Malaysians. So you talk about a wide spectrum of people. So it's not simply this group of people, that group of people. But the reason why we have so much discussion about MS63 now is simply because for the first time since the 1980s, the ruling coalition in both Sabah and Sarawak are not members of Pakatan Harapan at the federal level. People keep forgetting that Parti Warisan Sabah, the ruling party in Sabah, is not a formal member of Pakatan Harapan. And in Sarawak, of course, the former Barisan Nasional, now they call themselves the GPS, is officially the opposition. So because of that, right, both states are playing this issue, MS-63. They say that we are state nationalists. We do not want any more interference, and therefore we need to look back in order to get back the full set of autonomies that was promised to us during the negotiation stage from 61 to 63.
Okay, you used a very interesting phrase just now, state nationalists. I mean, it sounds like a contradiction in terms, because you have the federation. What does it mean to be a state nationalist? And does that, in terms of the broad spectrum that you painted just now, kind of edge into the separatist thing, the idea that actually we would be so much better off if we were in complete control of our resources and our politics was our own and we could make those determinations? I mean, is that separatist feeling, even if it's just notional, is it strong in Sarawak and Sabah?
It's very difficult to gauge because we don't have a proper public opinion polling system in Malaysia. But based on various snapshots, there is a sizable number of people who thinks that Sabah and Sarawak is possible to break away from Malaysia and it's possible to go on as independent states. Most of the time, their rationale for doing that is that Sabah and Sarawak are rich in natural resources. We have enough money to look, to get by, so we don't really need Peninsular Malaysia. The other favorite example they like to give is that they said that, look at what happened to Brunei. They're very smart. At the very last minute, they didn't join the Federation of Malaysia, and now they're one of the richest countries in Southeast Asia. The second example they like to use is they say, look at Singapore, also very smart. They got out in 1965, and look at Singapore today. This is a first world country. So they're saying that if these two countries can do it, why can't we?
Okay, I mean, there are of course questions of leadership within the two territories, Sabah and Sarawak, and the quality of that leadership for all these decades. But before we get into that, I do want to ask you, is there a generational dimension to that spectrum? You've kind of painted the spectrum in terms of political ideals and the rhetoric that will come from it, separatist versus integrationist, if you like. But what about the generational dimension? Do the youngest people, and I'd ask the young, because of the future, do young people gravitate to either end of this pole?
Again, it's very, very difficult to put precisely where they stand. But what I can tell you is that the overwhelming majority of young people in both states do not really understand what MS-63 was about. Part of it is that our schools are not taught proper history, as you probably know. Basically, the Malaysian history textbooks, they basically, in terms of the formation of Malaysia, is maximum maybe 3 pages. So very little is devoted to the actual process of MS-83, hardly anything about the history of Sabah Sarawak before they joined or before they formed the formation of Malaysia. So I think for the young people, what they understood is in fact a very simplistic form. They're saying that, back in 1963, we were given a set of guarantees. Today, the federal government has taken away a lot of the guarantees, and therefore we must fight to get back our autonomy. So
they're in the middle, as it were, of that spectrum, right?
I'm not sure they're in the middle, but I think there is a strong sense of being what Sarawakian is. There's a very strong sense of what a Sabahan is. But I'm not sure they know the full details of MS-63. But they're all in agreement that somehow we've got a rotten deal from 63 probably up to 2008. And now is the time that we have to do something. Okay,
before we go for a break, a very simple question. Singapore was allowed to leave the Federation. Is there actually a clause in the Federation that allows secession?
No, there's not.
So it was an extraordinary moment that Singapore, in fact, was allowed to separate from the Federation.
Singapore got away with it because the political leaders of Malaysia at that time and the political leaders of Singapore at that time, they actually negotiated over a long period. In fact, it took more than a year of negotiation. And on this side, what happened was that they passed a special act of parliament to separate Singapore. But if you look at the constitution, there is no right of succession in any of the Malaysian states.
Okay, we're going to take a short break now. We'll be back with more on the Malaysia Agreement 1963. Stay tuned. This is Let's Talk with me, Sharad Kuttan.